$40,000 years ago, a man named Og looked at a pointy rock, looked at a stick, and asked himself one question that would change the course of human history. What if stick had rock on end? This is the true-ish story of the world's first spear. Spoiler, it did not go well the first 19 times. Meet Og. Og is what modern anthropologists would call a guy who's trying his best. Og's tribe eats a lot of berries. Og is tired of berries. Og wants meat. The problem is that meat is currently attached to animals, and animals are, annoyingly, faster than Og, stronger than Og, and in one case, smarter than Og. This is Steve the rabbit. Steve does not respect Og. Nobody respects Og. Og would like that to change. That night, the tribe elder, a man named Yuji, who was Og but older and grumpier, called a meeting. The topic, food. Or specifically, the lack of it. We need meat, said Yuji, in grunts that translate roughly to that sentence. Og will get meat, Yuji added, mostly because Og was sitting closest and made eye contact at the wrong moment. Og's first plan was simple. Sneak up, grab animal, hope for the best. In hindsight, hope for the best is not a strategy. It is a wish. The board disagreed with the plan. Og concluded that hands, while good for scratching and pointing, were simply not pointy enough to compete with tusks. Og needed an upgrade. Next, Og tried rocks. Rocks were pointy-ish, and throwing them meant Og didn't have to get close to anything with teeth. Progress. Sort of. Og's aim, it turned out, was mostly a threat to Og. Somewhere between rock number 4 and rock number 11, Og had an idea. What if the rock didn't have to leave his hand? What if it stayed on something long? Something reachy. Something like a stick. Attempt 1. Just the stick. No rock. Simple. Elegant. Completely useless. Turns out a blunt stick is basically just a very rude finger. The deer was not impressed. The deer had places to be. Attempt 2. Tie a sharp rock to the stick using grass. This is, historically speaking, an excellent idea. Og's execution of it was less excellent. The grass held for exactly 1.5 seconds, which, in fairness, is 1.5 seconds longer than Og expected. Attempts 3 through 7 went about the same. Og was starting to develop what modern people call a grudge against grass. What followed can only be described as a masterclass in what does not work. Og tried vines. Og tried mud. Og tried chewing grass into some sort of paste, which, for the record, tasted exactly as bad as it sounds. At one point, Og tried tying the rock on using his own hair, which hurt Og far more than it helped the spear. By sunset, Og had invented 11 new ways to fail and 0 new ways to hunt. Yuji found him like this. Yuji was not moved by Og's suffering. Yuji was moved by Og's own stomach, which was growling loud enough to echo off the canyon walls. Tribe hungry, Yuji grunted. Tribe very hungry. Tribe start looking at Og like Og is food. This was, Og noted, extremely motivating. And then, entirely by accident, the best way most good ideas happen, Og smashed the end of a stick a little too hard, and it split open like a tiny wooden mouth. Instead of tying the rock on the stick, what if the stick just held it? Like a mouth holding a tooth? He wrapped grass around the split to hold it shut, tight as a clenched jaw. He shook it. He shook it harder. He shook it so hard he got dizzy again. It held. For the first time in one very long, very humbling day, it held. Og ran a victory lap. Then another. Then a third one, mostly because he was having too much fun to stop. The rest of the tribe didn't fully understand what had happened, but they understood excited Og and possible food were somehow related, and that was enough for them to start celebrating too. Even Yuji nodded. From Yuji, a nod was basically a standing ovation. Before the actual hunt, Og felt it was important to test his invention on a non-threatening target. He chose a log. The log put up admirable resistance. The log won round 1. Og counted it as a draw, because Og was writing the rules. Word travels fast in a tribe of 12 people. By morning, 2 other hunters had cobbled together their own spears, significantly worse spears, held together mostly by optimism and, in one case, what appeared to be a strip of someone's own sandal. Adjustments were made in real time. The hunting party set off at dawn, moving with the practiced stealth of men who had never actually been stealthy before. Every step seemed to make a noise specifically designed to alert every animal within 5 miles. The animals, for their part, were not concerned. And who should appear but an old friend, Steve. Steve the rabbit, unbeaten champion of humiliating Og. Og raised his spear. Steve raised one unimpressed eyebrow line. He missed. But, and this is the important part, he missed by less than a stick's width. For a man who once lost a foot race to this exact rabbit, that felt like victory. But the real test was still ahead. The boar. The same boar that had once sent Og flying with a single headbutt. This time, Og had a plan. This time, Og had a spear. This time, Og tripped over a rock immediately. The boar noticed. What happened next was either an act of incredible bravery or an act of a man who simply had nowhere left to run. History remembers it as the former. Og remembers it as the latter. Time seemed to slow down, which was convenient, because Og needed every extra second he could get. Contact. The spear held. Actually held, just like it had that very first day. The boar sat down abruptly, more surprised than anything else, as if it, too, could not quite believe this had worked. Og stood there in silence. He had not planned past this point. Nobody had planned past this point. Nobody expected it to actually work. They carried it home the way you carry anything you weren't sure you'd survive getting. Carefully, proudly, and a little bit in disbelief. Word of the hunt reached the cave before they did. By the time they arrived, the whole tribe was waiting. Yuji smiled. It was the smallest smile in recorded history, but historians agree, it counts. That night, for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, the tribe ate meat. And somewhere between the fire and the full stomachs, a new tool was born, one that would outlive Og, outlive his tribe, and eventually outlive berries as humanity's meal of choice. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the first attempt, or the 5th, or the 11th. But it worked. And really, that's the whole story of how humans got anywhere at all. Steve remained unconvinced. Steve remains unconvinced to this day. But Steve can talk to us about that next time.
Please like and subscribe me for more videos.